possible contacts or collusion with Russia. Presidential lawyer Rudy Giuliani telling CNN the president was asked, for example, what he knew about his son Don Jr.'s Trump Tower meeting with Russians who, you remember, promised dirt on Hillary Clinton. Also asked about some of the president's own public statements about Russia and Democratic emails. The answers were submitted yesterday. Giuliani telling CNN's Pamela Brown it's likely Mueller's team will have follow-ups and that the president's lawyers will consider them in good faith. But as for what comes next, meaning if Mueller now wants to ask questions about after the election, including potential obstruction of justice after Mr. Trump became president, Giuliani suggesting to Pam that could bring a fight over executive privilege. And the client, meaning the president, now pretty clear on the question of whether he would ever sit down for an interview with Mueller.
I think we've wasted enough time on this witch hunt, and the answer is probably we're finished. We gave very, very complete answers to a lot of questions that I shouldn't have even been asked, and I think that should solve the problem. I hope it solves the problem. If it doesn't, I'll be told, and we'll make a decision at that time. But probably this is the end.
It's interesting, and Pam Brown joins our conversation. The president there, questions I shouldn't even have been asked, gives you insight into his mindset. And Rudy Giuliani told you this, if there are follow-ups. So they submit these questions, Mueller team will look at them. If there are follow-ups, what did you mean by this? Or could you give us a little more detail about that? We'll consider them and answer them if necessary, relevant, and legal. If it was something that would be helpful, relevant, not a law school exam. So he's trying to tell Mr. Mueller what to do. Good luck.
Right. Well, and it was really interesting because it is clear that the president and his team of lawyers believe that the ball is in their court, or at least that is what they're trying to project here, that, if they want to have any follow-up questions, we'll look at it, we'll assess, we'll decide whether we want to respond. It may not be that clear-cut, but what is clear is that this may not be the end. You heard the president say in that interview, we think this is the end. Well, in talking to Rudy Giuliani and in talking to my sources, this is likely not the end. There are likely to be follow-up questions, and the door is still open for Robert Mueller to seek an interview with President Trump. That is certainly not off the table. Now, I will tell you, sources close to the president believe that it wouldn't go that far, because now that they have Matthew Whitaker as the acting attorney general, they do not believe that he would approve a subpoena to interview the president. So there is this sort of position that among the president and his legal team that, look, we've cooperated, we responded to Robert Mueller's questions, and we're on firm legal ground here.
Which raises a number of questions for what does Mueller do next? Does Mueller just decide, I'm not going to subpoena the president, I'll just write a report? Does Mueller decide, I am going to subpoena the president and I'll pick this fight, even if Matthew Whitaker tells me no? Or does Mueller decide, fine, I'm going to run out the clock, keep doing other things, we'll see who replaces Matthew Whitaker? So it's a fascinating moment. The submitting the answers to round one only really opens the door to a very long list of other questions.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable that they did submit these written answers, because what it tells you is they do want to appear cooperative, right? They don't want to stonewall from the beginning. Now they're taking a position that the president is not cooperating further, but they did want to appear cooperative at the outset. So, and you look back to the Clinton impeachment, and a deal was reached to avoid a subpoena fight for exactly the same reason. The president did not want to appear uncooperative. The president did not want to appear that he was stonewalling the investigation. And so, as Pam was saying, we don't know what the next steps are here, and there's going to be decisions made at this point, and the Trump team is not in control of that.
And the key is, don't want to appear non-cooperative. We don't know what they said in these answers. Right. They could be non-responsive, and they could actually prompt follow-up, and perhaps that could prompt the Mueller team to push for further answers. And maybe the Trump team is not giving as much information because they know they have an ally on their side in the acting attorney general.
And I will tell you, just on that note from my reporting, there were some questions that the legal team balked at, including the transition period. So that was after the election, before the inauguration. There were some questions Robert Mueller asked, and the president's legal team views that as a legally gray area that could be protected under privilege. It's unclear how, if that was resolved, but that's certainly been a sticking point. And there's still the open question of obstruction.
Well, and from a political perspective, the political dynamics that were in play when Bill Clinton wanted to appear not to be obstructing an investigation, and so submitted and essentially settled the question, that it's not unclear to me whether that is in play now, right? Because this president doesn't seem bound by those same dynamics of of whether or not he already appears to have been obstructing the investigation in all sorts of ways, and whether or not that kind of political pressure will work on him as he negotiates and his team negotiates with Mueller is unclear.
In President Clinton's case, what tipped the scales there was when they realized the evidence that the special counsel had. From testimony of other witnesses, the other evidence we won't discuss on television, say there's no need for it, but they just decided they had no choice. Partly for the cooperation, but partly because of the way of the evidence. The question is whether the same standard applies here. To the question of Whitaker, I said in the last segment, again, we should be fair to him and judge him by his actions as acting attorney general, not by what he said beforehand. But there is the question. We knew Jeff Sessions recused himself. Rod Rosenstein on Capitol Hill said many times, I oversee Robert Mueller. I know what he's doing. He's on the right track. Everything he's doing is fine. We haven't heard a peep from Matthew Whitaker, but we do know the president thinks this.
It's going to be up to him. I think he's very well aware politically. I think he's astute politically. He's a very smart person, a very respected person. He's going to do what's right. I really believe he's going to do what's right.
But you won't overrule him if he decides to curtail.
I would not get involved.
Now, on the one hand, I would not get involved. That's the right answer. But again, translate for me, he's going to do what's right. I really believe he's going to do what's right. Matthew Whitaker knows what the president thinks is right because he made that clear. Jeff Sessions never should have recused himself. He never should have allowed this investigation to go forward. Rosenstein is out of favor with the president because he did. So translate that.
I don't think we know the answer. I mean, we don't know what Matthew Whitaker is going to do. What we know is that what he's told Republicans on Capitol Hill to keep them on their side is that he will not interfere with this investigation. Now, because as Lindsey Graham said the other day, well, it's because Whitaker is concerned about how he's viewed. This is going to reflect on him personally. But, of course, he has to worry about how the president views him, too.
I think he owes the American people some transparency about how is he going to make these decisions. Needs some time to get settled, got it, but owes the American people some. This little footnote about the special counsel and how he plays hardball. George Papadopoulos was supposed to go to jail on Monday. He asked a court to give him a couple more weeks to let him stay out of prison. The special counsel quickly filing. The defendant has no pending appeal. His motion is made for purposes of delay, and he has not presented a substantial legal question that is likely to result in reversal. So the special counsel is sending another signal. He plays hardball. We'll watch how that one plays out in court.